see when you look at this loaf of bread? Maybe joy, because bread is the most socially acceptable way to get butter into your mouth as quickly as possible. Or maybe guilt, because you know you're going to eat it, but you're over your carb limit. When I look at this loaf of bread, this simple loaf of bread, I see power. Power to change the world. But I haven't always seen bread this way. 7 years ago, as a Peace Corps volunteer, I arrived in Rwanda, which is in East Africa. I joined the Peace Corps because I wanted to improve people's lives. But when I got to Rwanda, I realized very quickly that I had no idea what it meant to improve people's lives, let alone how to do it. And here I was, over 7,000 miles away from my home, living in Bushoga, an impoverished village by most definitions, contemplating how I could make a difference. So I did the only thing that I could do. I listened. I listened and I observed for that first year of my Peace Corps service. And in that year, I saw 3 problems: malnutrition, social and economic disparity, and limited opportunities, especially for women. I also saw that poverty went far beyond a simple financial measurement or even the meeting of basic necessities. I now saw poverty as the absence of choice. The absence of choice meant that a mother couldn't choose what to feed her child or when, and that parents couldn't choose where to educate their children, or even if they would have that opportunity. I realized in this context, if I were going to assist in improving people's lives, it would have to be by creating access to choice. But how do you do that? Well, this complex question answered itself in the form of something as simple as a loaf of bread. In the Peace Corps, I was given 2 things: training and a manual. Then when they dropped me off and said good luck, they also asked me to live as the people I'm serving live. In Bushoga, the rural Rwandan village I was assigned, that meant 1 meal a day. So in the name of solidarity, I ate 1 meal a day for about a year, until I realized, wait a minute, I'm super hungry. And I know you're super hungry, and I know your kids are super hungry, so let's figure something out here. And I started making midday salads using cabbage, avocados, onions, and tomatoes, teaching a group of women to do the same. These women knew of all of these vegetables because they grew them. They had just never put them together like this before, so I showed them. Then one day, to complement my midday salad, I baked a simple loaf of yeast bread. I'd found the recipe in my Peace Corps manual, and it only needed 5 ingredients: water, flour, yeast, salt, and sugar. And I could find everything locally. Page 22 of the same manual taught me how to construct a Dutch oven over an open fire using 2 pots and 4 stones. So I baked bread, and the bread was cooling on my table when 4 women came in for their salad-making lesson. "What's that?" they asked. "It's bread," I said. "Well, where did you buy it?" they asked me, knowing that it couldn't have been anywhere nearby. You see, bread is a known commodity in Rwanda, but it's scarce in the villages. "I made it," I said, and they were silent. Then, one woman, Mama Beyonce, walked straight up to me and smacked me squarely on the chest. Now, smacking is usually a sign of endearment in Rwanda, but sometimes it's also glee, and in this case it was both because the other 3 women followed suit. And in the midst of smacks and smiles, they asked me, "Will you teach us?" I thought to myself, well, I've only made bread once in my life, and it was this morning, but sure, why not? I'll teach you. And the next day, I taught 7 women how to make bread at my house. We began the process at 1 p.m., and it was dusk when we finally started to bake. Do you remember that one meal a day thing I mentioned earlier? Well, dusk is that mealtime in the village. This meant that these women were supposed to be in their homes cooking for their families, but instead they were with me, enjoying the smell of baking bread. Soon, hungry children appeared out of nowhere looking for their mothers. And huddled around my small makeshift oven, this group of 7 women grew to include about 20 children, all of us eagerly waiting for our one loaf of bread to finish baking. And when it did, I took the bread out, I tore up pieces, and I passed it to the women. The women tried the bread, sitting quietly, considering their bites. As soon as they realized the bread was good, however, these women took what was left of their bites and immediately shoved it into the mouths of the children around them. Before I could even take the oven off of the fire, I looked up to see every single child gobbling down a piece of bread, their eyes wide with delight. This is it, I thought to myself. This is how we improve the nutrition in this village. All we have to do is pump this bread full of fat, protein, and micronutrients. So I did. I began creating new recipes, fortifying more breads with local fats and proteins, like peanut flour, and micronutrients, like beets and carrots, teaching a group of women to do the same. My initial goal was simple: food, giving the women a skill that would help them provide a nutritious snack for their kids at home. But after about 2 months of baking lessons, Claudine and Angelique came to tell me that they had just successfully sold their bread at a nearby market. They sold their bread. These industrious women had just created a market for their fortified breads, meeting local demand with local supply. This is it, I thought to myself for the second time, because in that moment, I realized that something as simple as a loaf of bread had the power to address the 3 problems in this village by creating jobs for women, improving community nutrition, and sparking local economic growth. And then my mind exploded, and the seeds for the Women's Bakery were sown. The Women's Bakery is a social enterprise that teaches women to make and sell nutritious, affordable breads and manage profitable bakeries in their communities. And it's working. Thank you. Thank you. In just 2.5 years, we've educated 80 women, launched 6 bakeries in 2 countries, and directly impacted 372 children. Our bakeries sell in single servings, so pieces of bread, because we know that it's the most impactful way to reach a mass market. Our bakeries source locally, not just because we want to support the local farmers, but also because we want to spark a chain of new jobs. But most importantly, our bakeries create access to sustainable, gainful employment for women. Every single woman working at one of our bakeries has doubled her pre-bakery income. Yeah, right? It's amazing. Because think about it, if you just take a moment to imagine what you could do if you doubled your income. It's the same thing over there. Yeah. In Kigali, which is the capital city of Rwanda, we have 9 women working at one of our bakeries 6 days a week. These women produce over 600 pieces of bread a day and sell to an immediate market of 1,000 people. They've only been working at this bakery for about 1.5 years, and we expect the bakery to be profitable by December, proving the financial viability and sustainability of this model. Now, meet Frank. Frank's mom, Rose, pictured here in training 2 years ago, has quadrupled her income this year. With Rose's increased income, she can now provide more nutritious meals at home for Frank and, when he's ready, choose his school, afford his school fees, his uniforms, his health insurance, and his overall improved general safety. Because of bread, Rose can choose to invest in a better future for Frank. That's bread power. Thank you. Now, meet Jeanne d'Arc, a personal inspiration. Jeanne d'Arc can't read. She never had the opportunity to start primary school. During our trainings, Jeanne d'Arc couldn't read our lessons or take notes. Undeterred, she learned. Jeanne d'Arc is now our best seller. What's more is that we contract Jeanne d'Arc as a visiting trainer at our new bakery trainings, where she's teaching other groups of women, many like her, vital management skills. Because of bread, Jeanne d'Arc now has new skills and opportunities and can make choices about her life that she wasn't able to make before. That is bread power. Thank you. Bread has become this powerful medium for choice. And it's amazing because bread is seemingly so simple. It can be made with as few as 3 ingredients, and the task is fairly straightforward. Mix, knead, rise, bake. But in this story, the outcome of this simple, millennia-old process is wildly complex. These women are earning money. Their children are healthier, their communities are stronger, and the skills that they have earned can never be taken away. These women now have access to choices that they didn't have before, and they did it for themselves. All I did was bake a loaf of bread and tell them that they could do it too. They did the rest. For them, bread has become a catalyst for choice. And choice, as I see it, is how you start to challenge the cycle of poverty. I just got back from Rwanda, having spent about a month there. I went to our Kigali bakery and I said to the women, "Right, I would like to bake some bread so I can test this oven. Would you like to help me?" And they agreed. So I got ready. I got my materials ready, I organized the ingredients, and I washed my hands, and then I thought to myself, wait a minute, where's the recipe? And I asked the women, and they laughed at me. They laughed at me. They were like, "We have the recipes in our head, Markey." Super impressed, but also not deterred. I was like, wow, well done. I don't, so please pass me the recipe book. And I started to bake. Then Rose, Frank's mom, laughed at me again. "You don't know how to bake," she said to me. Right? I stopped, literally stunned. What? I thought to myself. I don't know how to bake? I'm one of the people who taught you how to bake. But then the most beautiful thing happened. Instead of smacking me, Rose gently pushed me out of the way and took over. Still half laughing, half commenting under her breath that I didn't know how to bake. I stood back and thought, no, this is it. This is the best thing that could happen. These women have more than bread baking skills and business acumen now. They have solid confidence and unwavering ownership. And if that is not a sign of success, I don't know what is. Thank you. So, the next time you look at a loaf of bread, consider its potential to create choice for so many. Think about all those women whose lives have changed because they learned a simple skill, baking, and made it their own. And see with us how something so simple really does have the power to change the world. Bread power. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks.